with his charming beauty. In this regard, again, Sri Rupa Goswami writes in Padyavali, a dark-complexioned thief has stolen my heart. Look, he has already stolen the sins of the surrendered devotees, the life breath of Putana, the bracelets and garments of the young gopis, and the eyes and hearts of the saintly devotees. So, once again, so many times, once again we are indebted to Srila Rupa Goswami. Not only us, but many devotees in the past have felt the same way, very indebted to him. One such devotee I was reading, his name is Govardhan Bhatta Goswami. Govardhan Bhatta Goswami. He was one of the prominent Goswamis in the line of Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, one of our 6 Goswamis in Vrindavan. He lived during the time of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and he actually wrote a commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam. In the introduction to his commentary, he writes, and I'll quote him, "My greatest good fortune is that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and I are friends forever." That's so sweet. My greatest good fortune is that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and I are friends forever. So this Govardhan Bhatta Goswami, he wrote another book called Govardhan Bhatta Goswami Grantha Vali. Govardhan Bhatta Goswami Grantha Vali. And one part of his book is called Shri Rup Sanatan Stotra, in which I was seeing there's many shlokas glorifying our beloved Rupa Goswami. For example, here are 2 of the verses. Who can achieve the shelter of the lotus feet of Sri Radha without the association of Sri Rupa? By hearing his beautiful compositions and by looking at his incomparable pearl-like beauty, Sri Gaurasundar happily dances while glorifying and praising him with all the devotees. Today, Sri Rupa is residing in Sri Vrindavan, being more humble than a blade of grass and more tolerant than a tree. He is holding a clay pot in one hand and a woolen blanket on his shoulder. He is singing the pastimes of Radha Kanta while sometimes sitting in the shadow of a kalpa vriksha tree. He is constantly chanting the names of Krishna, and every day he begs from the houses of Brahmanas. Hare Krishna. We thank that devotee. We have to thank so many devotees. So, within that beautiful composition, we hear that Rupa Goswami used to wear a woolen blanket on his shoulder. Now sometimes when I'm doing the research, I see that sometimes they're called blankets and sometimes they're called shawls or even chadars. But more often than not, they're called blankets. But not only did Rupa Goswami and the other 5 Goswamis of Vrindavan wear these woolen shawls or blankets, but so did Krishna and his cowherd boyfriends. And such shawls or blankets are listed in our Shastras as one of the items that can awaken, or we're using the term in this series, stimulate our devotion for the Lord. So I thought blankets would be the subject matter for today's lecture. That was all the introduction. Blankets, let's discuss blankets as part 6 in our series of stimulation for ecstatic love. Now in my research, I found that Krishna often uses a blanket and in various ways during his pastimes. In the online extended ISKCON Vaishnav songbook, we find in verse 3 of the song, Jaya Madhava Murari. If you go online, you can find that. Jaya Madhava Murari. The following, Gwala bhala shanga dhenu charai, vana vana brahmata pire yadu rai, kande kamara kare radhe sham shama sham. So beautiful. Translation is, Dear Krishna, you herd the cows in the company of cowherd boys. You, the monarch of the Yadu dynasty, thus wander from forest to forest, carrying a blanket. Here we go. Carrying a blanket draped over your shoulder. O Radhe Sham, Sham, Sham. Beautiful song. Other ways that Krishna uses a blanket are, for example, like a bedspread when he sleeps after his forest lunch party, it's described. It's like that, they say. His forest lunch party. Spreads out a blanket to take some rest along with his cowherd boyfriends. He uses a blanket to cover his body from rain. And I was reading the fabric of such a blanket doesn't absorb water. Krishna has a waterproof blanket. I also read in one pastime, let me remember, that Krishna covers himself with a blanket when Mukara's Sri Radha's grandmother, tries to catch Radha and Krishna together. He hides under his blanket. Now, I was also reading sometimes Krishna ties a blanket and uses it as a turban. And the sweetest thing is that when he sees a small calf shivering in the cold, he covers it with his blanket to warm it up along with a hug. Isn't that nice? When he sees a small calf shivering in the cold, he covers that calf with his blanket to warm it up, and he also gives the calf a hug. Hare Krishna. Now, it's also described that whenever Sri Radha, Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani Ki, when Sri Radha looks at Krishna's dark blanket, hanging or lying somewhere, her eyes immediately become filled with deep love. And she experiences ecstatic symptoms. In fact, here in Braj they say, Sut che jhara byaj ho prayaro. If you love someone, then you love his or her things more than you love your own self. Very beautiful. Sut che jhara byaj ho prayaro. If you love someone, then you love his or her things more than you love your own self. Well, that's Sri Radha. It's described that Sri Radha herself also uses a blanket from time to time in her pastimes with Krishna. For example, once on a dark moon night, Sri Radha's gopi friends assembled in her sitting room at Yavat. And there she was taking rest. And when she rose from her sleep, they helped her dress up to blend in with the darkness in order to go through the Vrindavan forest undetected to meet her beloved Krishna. She has to go out to the forest to meet Krishna. So they dressed her up appropriately. It was a dark moon night, so they dressed her in dark clothes, like a dark blue sari I was reading, and a dark blouse or chole. And then her servants adorned her braid with a black tassel and smeared dark musk on her body and decorated her with dark blue ornaments to match her dress. Like we call that shringara here in Vrindavan. The shringara means the jewels, all dark blue sapphires like that. And they also covered her with a shawl or a blanket. Now, interestingly enough, Sri Rupa Goswami writes in verse 4 of his Gandharva Sampartana Ashtaka as follows. It's related to this pastime. O goddess who strongly wishes to meet her lover, when can I arrange for your blissful nocturnal meeting with the son of the king of Braj in the grove by covering your body with a cloud blue shawl? By covering your body with a cloud blue shawl. Rupa Goswami is praying like that. And by removing the ankle bells from your feet. Wow. Now, we move on. The cowherd boys, Krishna's cowherd boyfriends, they also use blankets in their seva to Krishna, because everything in Vrindavan exists for the pleasure of Krishna. The blankets. So while these cowherd boys graze their calves in the pastures of Braj, Krishna and Balaram, they play with their friends in various ways. I was reading they sometimes throw stones at the fruit in the trees, and when the fruits fall, they either kick them around, like in playful sport, or they throw them around like playing catch. And sometimes they imitate the fighting of bulls, cowherd boys. And during these pastimes, like imitating the fighting of bulls, the boys cover themselves with their blankets. And like bulls, they loudly roar and they charge each other. So little detail, but pure nectar. Love is in the detail. Now the mention of blankets in Krishna's pastimes comes up, how could I say, in a variety of ways. Little ways. For example, after Krishna chastised the Kaliya serpent by jumping into the Jamuna river and fighting with him, he came out soaking wet, and as we know from reading Krishna book, Krishna was shivering from cold. So it's described that Mother Yasoda dried him off and wrapped him up in soft blankets. But of course, even then, Krishna was still shivering. So he climbed up Dwadasa Ditya Tila to warm himself in the afternoon sun. And we see that every time we do Parikrama here in Vrindavan, we pass by Dwadasa Ditya Tila. That's where Sanatana Goswami Samadhi Mandir is, and that's where the Madan Mohan temple is. So it's a little high, so Krishna climbed there to get warm in the sun because the blankets weren't enough. But blankets. I also read that one morning, this is interesting, one morning both Mother Yasoda and Yogamaya went to wake Krishna as usual, but on that particular occasion he barely stirred in response to their calls, and instead, it's described, he pulled a blanket over his head and moaned to his mother and Mother Purnamasi, "I feel sick today." He pulled a blanket over his head and he moaned, "I feel sick today." So they let him sleep. Now an interesting thing is that there's a forest in Vrindavan. We've many times described forest and sub-forest and sub-sub-sub-forest, etc. So there's a forest here in beloved Vrindavan, where I fortunately find myself again, called Kamaravhana. One meaning of Kamara is blanket. And there's a famous blanket pastime that took place in Kamaravan, from which the forest got its name. This pastime is described by the famous poet Surdas. How many times have we quoted Surdas? Actually, I've been to his samadhi. Very simple but very beautiful samadhi at Chanda Sarovara here in Vrindavan. And his poetry is just loved by Brajabasis. So in one of his poems, we find the following pastime. And I'll summarize it a little bit, rather than just read his poetry, summarize. It all began on a winter day in Vrindavan. Actually, I'm here in Vrindavan now in the winter. It's very chilly. So it all began on a winter day in Vrindavan when Krishna and his cowherd boyfriends were herding their cows near sacred Govardhan Hill. Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai. So from there, Krishna sent a message to Sri Radha to secretly meet with him in nearby Kamaravan forest. Now this message was delivered to Sri Radha by one of Krishna's boyfriends, one of the cowherd boys. How's that? Well, most of Krishna's cowherd friends have little to do or nothing to do with the young girls of Vrindavan. But there was, or you could say there is, a special class of cowherd boys who actually facilitate Radha and Krishna's meetings. We discussed this several years ago. They're called Priyanarma Sakas. Priyanarma Sakas. Cowherd boys like Shubal and Ujjval, who deliver messages back and forth between Radha and Krishna. Now, there's also gopi messengers, young girls who deliver messages. The principal gopis who deliver messages are 3 in number. Vrindadevi, Vrindarika, actually there's 4, Mela and Murali. They're the main message. But there's lots of gopi messengers. And all of them are described, I was reading, as fair-complexioned and always dressed in colorful garments. Always dressed in colorful garments. Not like nowadays in Kali Yuga. People wear grays and blacks and browns. Braj, dressed in colorful garments. We see that especially now in Rajasthan. The ladies dress in many colors. So it's written that all these gopi messengers, they're filled with great love for Radha and Krishna, and, listen to this, they all know the geography of Vrindavan very well. They all know the geography, because they have to take the messages, so they know all the pathways and the secrets here and where to hide in the caves, and all glories to those gopi messengers. Now, then again, there are the famous parrots of Vrindavan, like Sukha and Sari. They're famous also for carrying messages back and forth between Radha and Krishna. And Vichakshana. Who's Vichakshana? That's Krishna's pet parrot. And he's described in the Goswami literature as a very experienced personality in delivering messages for his master Krishna. He's famous here in Braj for having said one time, the parrot, of the many services rendered to the Prince of Braj, delivering messages is the most exciting. He thinks like that. Of the many services rendered to the Prince of Braj, Krishna, delivering messages, it's the most exciting. There's many different rasas or mellows of love for Krishna, and each devotee is fully satisfied in that relationship with Krishna. So many, because variety is the spice of life. And finally, we know that Krishna sends messages throughout Vrindavan with his famous Venu, or flutes. So anyway, on this particular winter day, Krishna sent a message to Sri Radha to meet him at Kamaravan, this sub-forest. And on that day, the air was very chilly, winter. So Krishna and all the cowherd boys were carrying their thick blankets with them. So when the time came for Krishna to secretly meet Sri Radha at Kamaravan, he had to get away. So he told his friends that he wanted to wander and see the beauty of Vrindavan alone. And taking his blanket, he made his way to this beautiful Kamaravan. And when he arrived, it's described, he placed his folded blanket on a large rock. And sitting on it, he waited for Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani to come. And in this poem by Surdas, he describes Krishna's blanket as black in color. That was interesting. Krishna has a black blanket. He calls it Kari Kamara. Kari Kamara. Excuse me. Kari Kamara. That's the name of Krishna's blanket. Kari Kamara. But unfortunately for Krishna, even after many hours, Sri Radha had not showed up. So he became despondent. Because one thing about Krishna is that he's very unhappy when he's alone. Why? Because, very simply, without his friends and companions, he could not taste or experience rasa. Rasa means, one definition of rasa is the mellows of loving exchange. Krishna's essential nature is to enjoy. That's confirmed in the Taittiriya Upanishad 261, in which the constitution, you could say, of Krishna's body is described as follows. I found this. It said, Krishna's head is pleasure, his right side is joy, his left side is delight, and his identity is bliss. I'll recite that again. Krishna's head is pleasure, his right side is joy, his left side is delight, and his identity is bliss. And being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, we are also, essentially our intrinsic nature is to enjoy with Krishna. When Krishna is pleased, we're naturally pleased. And as we said many times before, real enjoyment is experienced not in being alone, but in the company of others. Sometimes we may just go to our room, to take a break, but if we want to enjoy, we search out other persons. 1, 2, 3, whatever. So that very same Taittiriya Upanishad confirms Krishna does not like solitude. It's stated in that Upanishad, Kama yata bahu sham praja yeya. Kama yata bahu sham praja yeya. Quote, the Supreme Lord desired, let me become many, let me father many living entities. Didn't want to be alone. Just like a family man, or a couple in this world. They're married, and one time Prabhupada said, what is grihastha life without children? And it's a pleasure to raise nice Krishna-conscious children. So in the same way, the Lord expanded as many. For his personal enjoyment, he expands his Ladini Shakti, Vrindavaneshwari, Srimati Radharani, the divine couple. So anyway, back to the pastime. So Radha was late that day. She was late, but not of her own accord. Rather because of the watchful eye of her mother-in-law, Jatila. As a pastime, yes, Radharani is married to Abhimanyu, and Abhimanyu's mother is Jatila. And as we've discussed many times, Jatila is aware of Radha and Krishna's love for each other and is always on the lookout to make sure they do not meet. So that day, particular day when this rendezvous was supposed to take place at Kamaravan, Jatila was just keeping a keen eye on Sri Radha and was not even letting her go for her scheduled worship at Surya Kund, divine Surya Kund. And as a result, the acharyas write that with every passing moment, Krishna's kama, his loving desire to be with Sri Radha, intensified. And they write that mood can still be felt in Kamaravan today. And of course, this is another reason for the name, Kamaravan. Kama means desire. So it's a forest where Krishna felt intense spiritual desire for Vrindavaneshwari Srimati Radharani, the Queen of Vrindavan's association. So the acharyas say that Krishna was in this mood of anxious, vipralambam bhav. He was repeatedly rising from his seat off there and walking down the path and then returning to his seat again and walking down the path and returning to sit on the blanket. His eagerness to meet Sri Radha built up minute by minute until it's described, he was actually on the verge of fainting. So to prevent himself from actually falling down and losing consciousness, as well as to let Sri Radha know the seriousness of his condition is described, what did he do? He spoke to his flute. With so much nectar. Krishna spoke to his flute. He addressed his flute as follows, "O friend." Everything in Vrindavan is personal, remember. "Friend, you are my final resort. Please communicate to Sri Radha that I stand on the edge of a precipice from which only her touch can pull me back." So the flute, listen to this, the flute went into a state of samadhi. Into a state of samadhi. And without even making a sound, without playing a note, the flute communicated Krishna's message to Sri Radha. All glories to Krishna's flute. Now fortunately, when Sri Radha received the flute's message, she was already close enough to save Krishna before he fell to the ground. And it's interesting just how she did that. It's described that as soon as she got close enough to see Krishna, she stepped on a dry branch, making a loud, like cracking noise. And Krishna heard the noise, and at this looking around, he saw Radharani's golden effulgence, which is described, alone prevented him from falling unconscious. Wow. Radharani's golden effulgence, that prevented him from falling unconscious. So leaving the spot where he was sitting on his blanket, he rushed forward to embrace her. And that afternoon they spent many hours together, walking, talking, and joking in this very auspicious Kamaravan forest. And sometime later, Sri Radha left to go back to Yavat. And Krishna, it's described he just continued walking around in a daze of love, it said, in a daze of love. And while he was walking around in this daze of love, a thought came to his mind. Where's my blanket? He couldn't remember he brought his blanket, he was sitting on it. This daze of love. Where's my blanket? Did I bring it to Kamaravan? Or did I leave it with the cowherd boys? So the acharyas say that, still bewildered by the effect of Sri Radha's company, and even more so by her departure, he couldn't recall where was his blanket. So he addressed a group of gopis nearby who were, it's described they were busy tidying up the sacred forest. That's how it's described. I thought that was interesting. Tidying up the sacred forest. He said, and he also addressed them in a similar way as he addressed his flute earlier. Dear friends, gopis, have you seen my winter blanket somewhere in this forest? Now, though shy, these girls, these Braja gopis, took the rare chance to talk with Krishna. One gopi said, "Oh, a strong gust of wind blew it into the Jamuna. I saw it float away," teasing him. Krishna was startled. Then another gopi said, "I don't think that was Krishna's blanket. On our way here, I saw some cows near the path chewing on something. I think it was Krishna's blanket." So then a third girl teased, "Krishna, don't worry. For the small price of a flute song and a dance, we will give you a new blanket, much better than the old one." But Krishna was in no mood for joking. So he left to continue looking for his blanket. Now, it gets better, like everything in Krishna consciousness, it just gets better. Suddenly in the forest he came upon, who? Durvasa Muni, standing with long matted locks, wearing only a loincloth. And what? Happily holding Krishna's blanket. So it's said that, how's it put? Though many sages roam the forests of Bharat in India, Durvasa Muni is easily recognized amongst all of them. How so? The Mahabharata, Adi Parva, 120, verses 4 to 5, describes them as follows, Durvasa Muni. Ugram bharya charatatra brahmanam sam sita vratam nigudha nischa yam dharme Yam tam durvasa samvidu. Sounds pretty strong, pretty heavy, yes. Quote, there was a Brahmana who executed extreme austerities and who always keeps his thoughts and decisions about dharma extremely secret. That sage was known as Durvasa. Durvasa Muni ki. So standing before Krishna was that very person, Durvasa Muni, holding Krishna's blanket. It's described as if he had just discovered a great treasure. And certainly it was. So then Durvasa Muni said to Krishna, O son of Nanda, is this your blanket? To which Krishna replied, O Muni, it was mine until it came to you. My duty is to distribute wealth to the brahmanas daily, but I can never accept a gift from a brahmana other than his gift of transcendental knowledge. Wow. Therefore, what you hold now belongs to you. You know the principles of dharma, the knowledge that paves the way to liberation for conditioned souls. Please do with the blanket as you wish. My respectful obeisances unto you. All glories to you. Wow, Krishna's words to the Brahmana, Durvasa Muni. Now, pleased with Krishna's humility and kindness, Durvasa Muni accepted the Lord's blanket, Kamara, as what? Mahaprasad. The sage knew that by wearing that blanket, he would be freed from the cycle of birth and death. It's called tadiya, things that are used by the Lord or the Lord's pure devotees. They take on a spiritual quality. They're called tadiya, related to the Lord. All that tadiya is very potent. Actually, I was remembering that Uddhava, Sri Uddhava, teaches us about the importance of honoring Krishna's remnants in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 6, verse 46. There he says, and I quote Uddhava, Sri Uddhava, simply by decorating ourselves with the garlands, oils, cloths, and ornaments you, Krishna, have enjoyed, and by eating the remnants of your meals, we, your servants, will indeed conquer over your illusory energy. Hare Krishna. So that's but, one pastime amongst many about Krishna's blanket, or blankets, which if we hear about attentively, will help to awaken our dormant love for the Lord. They're actually unlimited things which we can meditate on about Krishna. And in that sense, there's no excuse for not falling in love with him, even in this one lifetime. There's so much material, Krishna conscious material, that we can hear about, that will be a stimulus for ecstatic love. Like just hearing about Krishna's blanket today. So in this regard, we'll conclude today with a nice description of Krishna from Srila Prabhupada's Nectar of Devotion, again, chapter 26, that you might want to meditate on so you can dream about the Lord in your sleep. Because Prabhupada has said, what we do during the day, the thoughts and things that we see during the day, sometimes we combine them even in funny ways to dream about them at night. He said, therefore dreams are illusion. But he said, when you dream about Krishna or the spiritual master, he said, that's a very nice dream. So here's some material that maybe when you close your eyes tonight, you can remember our beloved Krishna. So Nectar of Devotion states as follows. Generally, there are 4 kinds of garments on the body of Krishna. His shirt, turban, belt, and wearing garments. In Vrindavan, he used to put on reddish garments with a golden shirt on his body and an orange-colored turban on his head. The different kinds of belts combined with his enchanting smile used to always increase the transcendental bliss of his associates. This dress of Krishna is described as gorgeous. Gorgeous. As a baby elephant is sometimes dressed in colorful clothing, so Krishna's gorgeousness was manifest by decoration of colorful clothing on the different parts of his transcendental body. Shri Rupa Goswami Prabhupada ki. Nectar of devotion ki. Shri Rupa Prabhupada ki. So Prabhus, thank you. Just a blanket of the Lord brings us so much pleasure. I think I can find a few more pastimes about Krishna's blanket. If I can, we'll continue our discussion on that tadiya, that blanket. If not, we'll move on to some other paraphernalia in our hopes of being stimulated to the point of one day experiencing ecstasy of Krishna consciousness. It's possible by Srila Prabhupada's mercy. So see you next Friday. From Sri Vrindavan Dham. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari, Srimati Radharani ki, Mayapur Dhama ki, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Shri Krishna Sankirtan Yagya ki, back home, back to Godhead ki, Go Premanandi, Jai Jai Sisi Radhe, Shine, glorious to Shri Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, welcome back once again to our ongoing series on the glories of our most beloved Sri Vrindavan Dham. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. I'd also like to say another prayer to Srila Prabhupada in English. I offer my obeisances to my spiritual master who gave me beautiful Kantimala, effulgent tilak, the beautiful form of a devotee, and who offered me his shelter. In one of his hands he is holding my hand, and with his other hand he is holding the lamp of knowledge, which helps me to cross over the dark ocean of the material world. Surdas says, my Guru deserves the greatest respect because only he can rescue one in the blinking of an eye. I bow down to him again and again and again. Srila Prabhupada ki. So we are continuing with our mini-series on stimulation for ecstatic love, and this will be part 7. We'll begin with the beautiful poem by a poet named Chit Swami from his book called Nitya Kirtan. It was written in the year 1592. It's very sweet, glorifying both Krishna and his cows. Actually, I've realized from giving these lectures over a period of time that Krishna spends most of his day with his cows in the pasturing grounds of Sri Vrindavan Dham. There's actually a saying here in Vrindavan that if you see 5 cows sitting together, it means Krishna is very near. They say like that here. So this Brajavasi poet, Chitta Swami, he writes in the Brajbhas language. Agi gaya pachas gai, iti gai ita gai, govinda ko gayana mais vashavo bhavai. It's very nice. Cows are in front of him, Krishna. Cows are behind him. Cows are everywhere. Govinda, the protector of the cows, loves to be surrounded by them. He runs with them and derives great pleasure from them. He even rubs the dust of the hooves on his body. Oblivious to the mood of Vaikuntha, he plays with cows as a cowherd boy. He fills the land of Braj with beloved cows and protects them by holding up Govardhan Hill. The poet Chitta Swami says, "Just see the Lord of all that be. He is dressed like a cowherd boy and is returning from the pasturing grounds to Braj with his cows." Very sweet. So in his duties as a gwala, that's how they call a cowherd boy here in Vrindavan, it's said that Krishna uses his flute to call them. He uses his stick to show them the way, and sometimes he also uses his stick to pet his cows. And he uses his silken rope to control them. But there's one more very special thing that he uses in herding cows, which stimulates love for him in the hearts of his devotees, including, I was reading, even Srimati Radharani and her gopis. And what is that? His blanket. You could say this is part 2 about his blanket. In our last lecture, we spoke about Krishna's blanket. So special, his blanket. Now, hearing the word blanket, we might think that Krishna, uses it just for covering himself, like when he sleeps, or to protect himself from the cold. But no, he actually carries a blanket as part of his, his outfit every day while going to the forest with his cows. During my research, I found an old painting in Vrindavan that depicts not only Krishna, but all the cowherd boys wearing blankets while herding cows. And then I found out that even today, there's a caste of herdsmen in Gujarat, India, that still carry big sticks, and they wear blankets on their shoulders as a uniform, which distinguishes them from the shepherd caste who herd goats. They don't wear the blankets. And actually, there's traces of such a tradition as carrying blankets to be seen here and there in Vrindavan as well. Like lots of times we'll be out different villages in Vrindavan, I'll see the cowherd boys, they're carrying blankets. And certainly blankets are very much part of our overall Vedic tradition. The Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 3, verse 27 describes that when the Brahmin descendants of the Vrishni, Bhoja, and Andaka dynasties, who are all incarnations of demigods, went to Prabhasha, they were given charity in the form of blankets. The exact verse is, the Brahmanas were not only given well-fed cows in charity, but also gold and gold coins, bedding, clothing, animal skin seats, that meant deer, blankets, horses, elephants, servants, and sufficient land for maintenance. Now the 10th canto, 10:71:16, also mentions blankets. When Lord Krishna departed Dwarka to fight with Jarasandha, he was accompanied by an army, he had servants, even had his queens. So the verse says, on all sides proceeded finely adorned women, attendants of the royal household, as well as courtesans. They rode on palanquins and camels, bulls and buffalo, donkeys, mules, bullock carts, and elephants. Their conveniences were fully loaded with grass tents, blankets, clothes, and other items for the trip. Srimad Bhagavatam. So, it's no surprise then that the Brajavasis had blankets in Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes 5,000 years ago. But it's important to note that such blankets in Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes were particularly special. How so? Because as we've mentioned several times, Everything in Braj is personal, everything is conscious. That's the nature of the spiritual world. In fact, Srila Jiva Goswami says in Gopal Champu Purva, first chapter, Prakriti Shtitam Atito Hi. It means Vrindavan is beyond all considerations of dead matter. Vrindavan is beyond all considerations of dead matter. A very eloquent way of saying that in the spiritual world everything's conscious, everything's personal. As a result, 5,000 years ago, during Krishna's pastimes on earth, anything and everything in Vrindavan achieved perfection. Even something so simple as a blanket. Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 12th chapter, verse 8 says, Kevalena hi bhavena gopyo ghavo naga muriga yene mudha diyo naga siddhamam ir anjasa. Beautiful Sanskrit. The inhabitants of Vrindavan, including the gopis, cows, unmoving creatures, such as the twin Arjun trees, animals, living entities with stunted consciousness, such as bushes and thickets, and snakes, such as Kaliya, all achieved the perfection of life by unalloyed love for me, and thus they very easily achieved me. This is from the lotus mouth of Sri Krishna. So, something so simple as a blanket, a blanket in Vrindavan, it's not ordinary, it's extraordinary. And thus, there are many pastimes where Krishna's blanket or blankets play a major role. We discussed a few in our last lecture, but for your pleasure, I shall share another beautiful pastime with you now. We find this beautiful pastime containing the blanket in the works of a famous Vaishnava poet named Lalit Kishore. Now, I did some research. Lalit Kishore Das was a contemporary poet of Srila Narottam Das Thakur, who himself was an extraordinary poet. Lalit Kishore was from the village of Uchgaon, near Varshana, Lalita's village, and he was initiated in the line of Gadadhar Pandit of the Panchatattva. His beautiful poetry, I found out, is still sung today in both the Radharaman temple in Vrindavan and Radha Govindaji's temple in Jaipur. They sing his poetry. He wrote a book called Gaur Lila Sagar. Gaur Lila Sagar. And his descriptions of the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya were all written in the Braj Bas language of Vrindavan. As an indirect result of this, an indirect result of this, unfortunately, was that his poetry was not widely read during his lifetime because most of Lord Chaitanya's followers were Bengali and were not conversant with the Braj Basa dialect. But fortunately, some of his writings are there now in the Vrindavan Research Institute, so we had a chance to go over them. So he relates that one time some gopis were fetching water from a well in Braj. And of course that's very laborious work. If you see when we go out on Parikram, we often see the young girls, bringing these buckets of water up from the bottom of a well. It's quite strenuous. So that's what was happening. They were fetching water from a well and it was difficult. So they asked Madhu Mangal, who was resting nearby with Krishna, in a very humble way. They said, "Hey Madhu Mangal, wake up. You are very strong. Our wrists and arms are weak. Please help us to place these heavy water pots on our heads so that we can carry them to our homes." Now Madhu Mangal was astonished. He said to the girls, "What nonsense is this? I'm the son of a Brahmana. Did my mother give birth to me to place cheap water pots on the heads of village girls? So hearing his words, the young gopis, they just started giggling and laughing. So Madhu Mangal became offended, actually became angry, and he looked over to where Krishna was sleeping. But it's described that when he saw Krishna's moon-like face, all his anger dissipated. And pausing for a moment, he thought, I'm not going to waste time arguing with these girls. I'm going to go back to my afternoon nap with Krishna. I'll go back to my nap with Krishna. But, he considered, if I fall asleep now and Krishna wakes up later and goes to herd his cows, I'll miss out on everything. I'll miss out on everything. So I'll do one thing. I'll tie one end of my blanket to Krishna's feet and the other end to my feet. That way, if he wakes up and tries to leave, he'll fall all over me and wake me up too. Interesting plan. So, after tying the two of them together, Madhu Mangal laid down to rest, to go to sleep. And then just a couple hours later, Krishna woke up. And as per Madhu Mangal's plan, when he tried to stand up, he quickly fell down over Madhu Mangal because, well, their feet were tied together with Madhu's blanket. So at that moment, of course, Madhu Mangal woke up and he immediately embraced Krishna, who was lying next to him. So Krishna, taking in this situation, he looked at Madhu, he said, Madhu, why did you bind our feet together with a blanket, causing me to fall down on the ground so hard? So Madhu replied, my dear friend, why should you be surprised? Every morning while wrestling, you are defeated by even the smallest of boys who make you fall on the ground while fighting. What to speak of the strongest fighter, me? This is Madhu Mangal, a funny cowherd boy. But Krishna, the real issue I want to discuss with you is that today your Braja Gopis insulted me. So Krishna, he said, oh, how is that, Madhu? So Madhu Mangal related the whole incident that took place at the water well. And hearing this, Krishna made a concerned look and he said, don't worry, Madhu, we'll take revenge on those girls. The pastime's building up. So the next morning, Krishna and his funny cowherd friend, Madhu Mangal, made their way to a forest trail where the same group of gopis were passing through to fill, after filling their pots with water. There from a distance, a little distance away, they hid behind the bushes. Krishna and Madhu Mangal threw small stones at the gopis' water pots, causing them to break apart and making all the gopis soaking wet. That was the revenge. So visibly upset, all the girls immediately made their way to Varshana to complain to the Queen of Vrindavan, Srimati Radhika, Srimati Radharani. And upon arriving, Lalita Sakhi came forward and gave a full report to Sri Radha and concluded by saying, O Radhe, Krishna's mischievous behavior is out of control, and on top of that, his fat friend, Madhu Mangal, is helping him to do such things. O Queen of Vrindavan, on behalf of all of us gopis, I'm requesting you to do something. So, hearing from her, I could just say, her favorite gopi, Lalita, Sri Radha took the incident very seriously. And she said, O Lalite, as you are the one who experienced this mockery, the poet uses this word, this mockery, you should tell me what punishment I should give to Krishna this time, indicating there's many times. What punishment should I give to Krishna this time? And Lalita thought for a moment and she replied, Man. Man is the best punishment. So remember, man in Sanskrit means anger. So in other words, she's saying, once again, show your anger to Krishna. And Lalita concluded, but this Krishna, Radhe, He's very tricky. He always finds a way to pacify your anger, but don't allow that to happen this time. You remember so many pastimes we told how Krishna goes in various ways. He pacifies Srimati Radharani's anger. But not this time, Rita said. And Radha, she continued, for his continuous grievous offenses to us gopis, I also recommend, get this, you steal his cherished blanket, the one woven and embroidered with gold and silver metallic threads and embedded with pearls on the border, that blanket. So Srimati Radharani, she thought for a moment and said, yes, expressing my my anger, and stealing his beloved blanket are certainly appropriate punishments. So then Sri Radha, Lita, and her friends made their way, some distance away, to where Krishna was now taking rest under the shadow of a kadamba tree, while all of his cowherd friends swam in the nearby Chimuna River. So he's actually sound asleep. Now at that point, Sri Radha, with the help of her friends, very slowly snuck up. They were crawling, not making any, being very careful not to break any little sticks and make a noise or rustle the leaves. They slowly snuck up to where Krishna was sleeping. And with great care and attention, very deftly, they managed to take his blanket from under him. Don't ask me how they did it, but they did it. And they all ran back to Varshana. So not long after Krishna woke up, this is also much nectar, Krishna woke up and noticing that his blanket was gone, he started searching for it frantically everywhere. And unable to find it, he returned to where he'd been sleeping and seeing particular very unique flowers that are always part of the flower bracelets of Sri Radha lying on the ground, he came to the conclusion that it was Sri Radha, who had stolen his blanket. The little flowers from her bangles. That was the evidence. So now, taking his friend Madhu Mangal with him, Krishna immediately made his way to Varshana to confront Sri Radha, because that blanket's very dear to him. But when he arrived and approached the gates of the palace, a Saki stopped him saying, "Oh, dark-looking cowherd boy, don't you know our queen is resting? You cannot go inside." But Madhu Mangal, he brushed the Saki away, and he and Krishna made their way into the palace. Now, while passing by one of the many rooms, they overheard Sri Radha and her girlfriends laughing and joking about how Sri Radha had silently stolen Krishna's beloved blanket. So entering the room, Krishna said to Radha, "My dear Sri Radhe, I know you have stolen my blanket. Please give it back to me, as this blanket was given to me by my mother, Yashoda, and she will be very upset if it's lost." So at that point, one of the girls, one of the gopis, she spoke up saying, "Krishna, why would our queen steal your dark, dusty blanket?" I really like that one. "Krishna, why would our queen, Sri Radha, steal your dark, dusty blanket?" So Krishna kind of took it all in. He paused for a moment, and it's so nice, he said very softly, "To punish me." To punish me. So then Sri Radha said, "Exactly, Krishna. And it appears you have realized now how you have mistreated my dear friends. But I will only return your blanket on one condition." So Krishna, he said, "Whatever the condition is, I will accept. Just please give me back my blanket." So Radha, she shot back, "No. First listen and then agree to the condition. Then only I'll return your blanket." So Krishna said, "All right, What's the condition? Whatever it is. So Radha, she said very slowly, the condition is you take 4 explicit vows, special vows. To take some vows here, Krishna, 4. So Krishna said, what are the 4 vows? It's so sweet, Prabhus. Listen to this. Shri Radha said, the first vow is that you will never trouble my dear gopis again. So Krishna said, yes, my beloved, I take that vow. Then Shri Radha said, the second vow is that you will never leave Braj. So Krishna said, I accept that vow, Shri Radha. I'll never leave Vrindavan. Then Shri Radha said, the third vow is that you will always stay within my heart. And Krishna said, yes, dear one, I will always remain within your heart. Then Shri Radha said, and the fourth vow, Krishna, the last vow, is that you will never leave my devotees, even during the worst times of their lives. You will never leave my devotees, even during the worst times of their lives. So Krishna paused and closing his eyes, he replied with deep emotion, yes, dear Radha, I promise I will never abandon those devotees who have taken shelter of you, even when they are experiencing their most difficult of times. Jai Sri Radhe. Yes, dear Radha, I promise I will never abandon those devotees who have taken shelter of you, even when they are experiencing their most difficult of times. Jai Sham. So at this point, Shri Radha broke out in a big smile and handed Krishna back his cherished blanket. Ta-da! And then they embraced each other. And at that point, all the gopis, they'd perform arti to the divine couple, and finally showered them with fragrant flowers. Hare Krishna. So, Prabhus, in this pastime we see once again how deep is Radha's love for Krishna. As we've discussed, so much so that she actually controls him with her love. And we also see how deep is Krishna's love for Radha. For love, of course, is reciprocal. Krishna's love for Radha is expressed in a beautiful verse from the Brahma Vaivarta Purana, Krishna Janma Kanda 1570. I found it. Where Krishna says, listen to this, Rashabdham Kurvatashto Dadami Bhaktim Uttamam Dasabdham Kuravat Pashtad Yami Shravana Lobata. Krishna speaking, on hearing the syllable Ra, I become anxious and bestow the most pristine bhakti upon the chanter. And on hearing the syllable Dha, I personally follow the chanter in order to hear the chanting of the name Radha. Let me recite that again. From Krishna's heart. On hearing the syllable Ra, I become anxious and bestow the most pristine bhakti upon the chanter. And on hearing the syllable Dha, I personally follow the chanter in order to hear the chanting of the name Radha. Now, of course, these are all very deep subject matters. This is not like, introductory class to Krishna consciousness or something from Bhagavad Gita. But nevertheless, these matters can be realized by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu under the direction of Srila Prabhupada. In this regard, there is the following verse composed by a Gaudiya Vaishnava named Anadi in his commentary to Chaitanya Chandamrita, verse 28 by Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati. That verse is Krishna Parambuja Rasa Sambandha Kasya Na Kachit Janat Yana Bhavat Yevam Tamrasam Gora Parasada. So beautiful. No one in this world has ever had contact with the taste of the ambrosia flowing from Sri Krishna's lotus feet. Only the associates of Sri Chaitanya are familiar with this rasa, liquid mellows, through personal experience. Only by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can we understand these deep subject matters. Once again, no one in this world has ever had contact with the taste of the ambrosia flowing from Sri Krishna's lotus feet. Only the associates of Sri Chaitanya are familiar with this rasa, liquid mellows, through personal experience. Now, in that verse, the word Parshada means literally associates, means the personal associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But I checked with some Sanskrit scholars. It can also mean devotees. So it can read like this. No one in this world has ever had contact with the taste of the ambrosia flowing from Sri Krishna's lotus feet. Only the devotees of Sri Chaitanya are familiar with this rasa, liquid mellows, through personal experience. But the Sanskrit scholars, devotee Sanskrit scholars pointed out to me that using the term devotees is an approximation. For they say that the acharyas say that not all devotees of Mahaprabhu are able to attain success in one lifetime. The acharyas say that not all devotees of Mahaprabhu are able to attain success in one lifetime. Nevertheless, we, as members of ISKCON, we have an extra added incentive. What is that? It's the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. Just as Lord Chaitanya is more merciful than Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, in bringing Lord Chaitanya's movement to the West, he brought it to us in such a way that it's, you could say, easy for Westerners to practice. If we had to practice according to the times of Lord Chaitanya, it would be very difficult. But Prabhupada adapted. He's the Acharya. He can do that. He made it very simple for us. And that simplicity is there in the institution of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, we can achieve that exalted state mentioned earlier, if we take proper advantage of that mercy. Therefore, we can pray to him daily. And I'll conclude with this prayer. As I opened the talk today with the prayer to Prabhupada, we glorified him in the middle, we will glorify him at the end. For he's our savior from this ocean of material existence to the lotus feet of Radha Shyam in the spiritual world. And here's this beautiful prayer. Shri Guru Karuna Maya Bandhum Tara Paradhaya Prema Kalpaturu Varadhata Dikshamantra Harinam Yahara Amulya Dhan Gibo Gabo Tasha Guna Gata. It's one of my favorite prayers. I bow down to the lotus feet of my spiritual master, who is a wish-fulfilling tree of divine love for Krishna, the most munificent benefactor who initiated me into the valuable jewels of both the Gayatri and Maha Mantras. How can I sufficiently praise his glories? Hare Krishna. All glories to Prabhupada, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Shri Radha Shyam ki, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki, Madhu Mangal ki. So thank you, Prabhu. We got 2 classes out of the blanket, which, when hearing these glories, can gradually stimulate and awaken our love for the divine couple. So we'll leave you there, from here in Shri Vrindavan Dham on a cold winter.
Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Anganiyasya Sakle Priyavritti Manti Pashyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govinda Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane
Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashasya Devatarine
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashasya
Hare शिला व्यास देव की श्री श्री भक्ति धीरा स्वामी महाराज की पिताई गौर प्रेमानंदे।
Vatsala Sri Gaura Hari Vatsala Sri Gaura Hari Vajabhakata Vatsala Sri Gaura Hari Vajabhakata Vatsala Sri Gaura Hari Sri Gaura Hari Sahi Goshta Bihari Nanda Jasomati Chita Hari Nanda Jasomati Chita Damodara Ishaye Kono Bhoga Mandire Bashi Karaha Bojano Nandera Nideshi Bashi Giri Baradari Baladeva Saha Shaka Vaise Sari Sari Shukta Shakhari Vaji Lalita Kushmanda Dalidana Dugda Tumi Dadi Mocha Kanda Dabora Mash Boda Roti Kabritana Chaskuli Pista Kakir Puli Payasana Kapura Amrita Keli Ramba Kirashara Amrita Rasalama Dvadasha Pakora Luci Sinisar Puri Ladura Sabali Bhojana Korena Krishna Hoye Kutuhali Radhikara Pakayana Bibida Byanjana Paramayanande Krishna Korena Bhojana Chale Bale Ladu Khai Sri Madhu Mangala Babala Bajayara Deya Hari Bolo Radhikari Gani Hari Nayane Rakone Ripta Hoye Kai Krishna Jasoda Bhavani Bhojanande Piye Krishna Subhasita Bari Sabe Mukha Prakaloy Hore Sari Sari Asta Mukha Prakaliya Jata Sakadane Anande Vishrama Kore Baladeva Sane Jambula Rasalane Tambula Masala Tahake Krishna Chandra Sukeni Jagela Vishalaka Shiki Pucha Chamara Dulaya Apurva Saya Krishna Sukeni Rayaya Yasomati Anga Piye Danishtaya Nito Sri Krishna Prasad Radha Unje Hoye Prito Lalitari Saki Gana Avashesha Paya Mane Mane Sukhe Radha Krishna Guna Gaya Hari Lila Ekamatra Jahara Pamoda Bhogarati Gai Thakur Bhakti Vinoda Katha Vatsala Sri Gaurahari Vajapakata Vatsala Sri Gaurahari Sri Gaurahari Sahi Gosta Bihari Sri Gaurahari Sahi Gosta Bihari Nanda Jasomati